my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. And I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. And exchange it someday for a crown.
But today I'm going to be talking to you about finding rest. And finding rest is a very interesting thing. It's something I've been working on for a really long time, mostly because my life is absolutely insane from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. But in order to find rest, you really have to understand why you're finding rest and like what the important part is. And I really love the story of Moses. Moses was my my favorite Bible story as a kid. I loved the Prince of Egypt movie, if you've ever seen it. I sing that lullaby all the time, you know, the hush now, my baby. That's a wonderful song. If you have not seen that movie, it is a great, great, great movie. But basically Moses, from the moment he was born, like his mom put trust in God that he was going to do wondrous things. I mean, she put this baby in a basket and then kind of let him go because they were killing off all the sons. And she's like, not my baby. So she did everything that she could, and she put this baby in a basket and she let him kind of go. And then Moses' whole thing is he grew up as a prince with his brother, and his brother ended up becoming the ruler over Egypt. And so, but Moses had a greater purpose. His purpose was to take the Israelites out of slavery and have freedom and be able to go with God and live God's will. And so Moses basically told the king, hey, let my people go. And over again, his brother said, no, I'm not going to do that. He did a bunch of plagues and stuff. And long story short, he finally let them go. It's a really long story, so it's a very, very long one to digress. But for the purposes of what we're trying to get to, we're going to flash forward. So they finally get let go, and while they're let go, Moses goes to a mountain, and he goes to speak with God, and he wants to get the 10 Commandments. And he was gone for a really long time. And so since he was gone for so long, they started getting impatient. And so his brother came down and said, and was talking to the people, and the people were like, hey, this man has been gone for a long time. Like, where's this Moses? He's like been gone for a really long time. And so his brother said, oh, well, let's praise God. But instead of praising the God who had set them free, they decided that they were going to make a golden calf in their meantime. So they put together this golden calf, and they took all of their bracelets and all of their jewelry, and they put it into this really big fire, and they burnt it all down into this molding that they made a calf. And Moses had saw this when he was talking to God. God said, no, go back down to the mountain. Your people are disobeying me. So he went back down to the mountain, and we're going to be looking in chapter 32 of Exodus. This is when the golden calf kind of goes in. So starting with verse 1, when the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. Aaron was Moses' older brother. Come on, they said, make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us out from the land of Egypt. So Aaron said, take the gold rings from your ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and they brought them down to Aaron. And Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "Oh, Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Okay, so For those of you who are not familiar with the story of Moses, that calf, I can tell you, did not free them from their slavery. But their whole perspective, their whole mind is this was like a regular practice in their time. And it was really hard for them to kind of have that mindset that, okay, the Lord is always going to be with us. The Lord is the one who's done all these good things for me. And so they did what they do best, and they made a gold calf and said, oh, this is our God now. This is the one who freed us. And they completely disregarded all the things that had happened prior to that. And so not very good. And what's so interesting too is Aaron, since he's Moses' older brother, Aaron was the one that kind of led this. He was like, yeah, you know what? This is my time to shine. This is my time to lead these people. We're going to lead them this way. And so, which was not right at all. So after they had made the calf, in verse 6, the people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. And in the Old Testament, offerings were like a very, very, very normal thing to do. Like in the book of Numbers, like it's so many offerings. There's so many grain offerings and peace offerings and just all kinds of offerings. So they basically took this calf and did what they would have done to the Lord and gave them these sacrifices. And then in verse 7, the Lord told Moses, remember, Moses is up on this mountain trying to talk to God and figure out what he's going to do with these people, how he's going to lead them. And in verse 7, the Lord told Moses, quick, go down from the mountain. Your people whom you've brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the land from the life I've commanded them to live. They have melted down a gold calf. They have melted down gold and made a calf, and they have bowed down and to sacrifice to it. They are saying, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So then the Lord says, I have seen how stubborn and rebellious these people are. Now leave me alone in my fierce anger and blaze against them, and I will destroy them, and I will make you, Moses, into a great nation. So at this point, God's basically telling Moses that since these people are kind of a lost cause and they're already doing what they're not supposed to, he's going to basically just destroy them, and Moses is going to have to start from scratch again. But Moses tried to pacify with the Lord and say, Lord, why are you so angry with your own people whom you have brought to the land of Egypt with such great power and a strong hand? Why let the Egyptians say their God rescued them with the evil intention of slaughtering them and in the mountains and wiping them away from the face of the earth? Turn away from your fierce anger. Change your mind about this terrible disaster you have threatened against your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bond yourself with an oath to them, saying, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give them all of this land that I have promised to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. So Moses, I laugh at this part of the story because Moses thinks he has the right to tell God what he should do, right? So, and Moses should kind of know better that like, hey, God's going to do what he's going to do, but he convinces God. He convinces him to not have his wrath over these people who he has spent so long freeing, because it was a very long process. It was days and days and days of travel, days and days and days of trying to plan out this wonderful, fulfilling life that they're supposed to have. And God was the one that was guiding Moses in order for them to achieve that. And then Moses in verse 14, the Lord changed his mind about the terrible disaster he had threatened to bring on his people. In verse 15, then Moses turned and went down from the mountain. He held in his hands 2 stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. These tablets were God's work, and the words on them were written by God himself. When Joshua had heard the boisterous noise of the people shouting below them, he exclaimed to Moses, it sounds like a war in the camp. So you have to understand that God, when he told Moses to go back down, he had given Moses the 10 Commandments, right? So those were what was scribed on those 2 stones. But Moses shouted, no, it's not a shout for victory, nor the wailing of defeat. I hear the sound of a celebration. So remember, when the people were having this calf, they did this whole celebration. They were like, yes, this is my Lord. Like, woo, it's going to be great. But they thought they were hearing this war. Joshua thought they were hearing this war. But Moses was saying, no, it's a celebration. So when they came down near the camp, Moses saw the calf and was in all of the dancing, and he burned with his anger. He threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf they had made and burned it. And then he ground it into powder, threw it in the water, and forced the people to drink it. Let's just sit on that for a second, because first of all, Moses was gone for a very long time, right? He was gone on this mountain because he was going to get all of this direction from God in order to keep this peace and have like this wonderful life. And he was gone for that long because he was trying to find those directions. Guess what? He came down the mountains with those directions, and he saw what they were doing, and he smashed them. All that time when he was up on the mountain trying to find those directions that he had in his hand, the reason why the people were being impatient, he just had to start from scratch, which means he'd have to go back up to the mountain later on in the story. So all of the things that God had told Moses to tell the people, all the 10 commandments that he had, because they were shattered, I mean, you kind of have to think of it like, okay, here was what their destiny was, but they screwed up, so now we have to start over. So then, when he, after he did that, he took this huge calf. Now, this calf was ginormous. From whatever the descriptions was, this calf was huge, and so to burn it down and to put it into water and to have people drink it, I mean, it's kind of like drinking your what you just did, and it's kind of, I mean, I would never do something like that ever again if that was the repercussion. I don't know about you, but I would never want to drink that, especially because of how big that calf was. That drink must have been like really potent with that gold, nasty, melted, burning taste, but they had to drink it because they had to know what they did, and what they did was so great because they lost sight of this purpose of God, of who they were trying to follow, of the one who had saved them from their slavery, and they just completely just disregarded that. And so sometimes, I mean, there's so many things that happen in our life where we lose sight of that, and there may not be extreme repercussions like that, but you need to understand when you're trying to find your rest, and what part of time did you go wrong, and what part of time could you have fixed. And that is something that I kind of took from this story, that if they wouldn't have done that, I mean, Moses would have came down from the mountain after maybe several more days. They would have had their 10 commandments. They would have moved on. They would have continued their walk. But instead, because they lost sight of him and they made this calf and they took all this time to praise him and praise this calf, they had to start from scratch. And so then in verse 33, Moses is again talking with the Lord, trying to calm him down because of what just happened. In verse 33, I'm getting ahead of myself. Verse 32:23, we go back to Aaron, because now Moses is irritated and he wants to know who did this, who's to blame. And he went and talked to his brother, and he said, why did this happen? And then Aaron had said that, the people kind of made me do this. They asked me to make us a god. And it kind of sounds familiar, right? Like, have you ever heard the story of Adam and Eve? And when God's like, hey, why'd you do this? Well, Eve made me do it. Oh, well, no, Adam made me do it. Oh, no, the serpent made me do it, It's always pointing blame. And that's kind of hard to swallow your pride and not admit that you were wrong. And that's really, really, really hard, especially when you made a mistake and you know it, and you went against God's word and you know it, but instead of swallowing that and saying, yes, I messed up, yes, this is not what I was supposed to do, Aaron instead took that opportunity and he said, oh, well, it's everybody else's fault, not mine. And Moses was not happy with that. And so that's why they started drinking the calf. So let's go to Exodus 33. So Exodus 33, God's very disappointed in them. We're going to go to 33, 12. And Moses goes into the tent and speaks with the Lord. And in Exodus 33:12, it says, "One day Moses said to the Lord, 'You have been telling me, take these people up to the promised land, but you haven't told me whom you will send with me. You have told me, I know you by name, and I look favorably on you. If it is true that you look favorably on me, let me know your ways so I may fully understand and continue and enjoy your favor.' And I remember that this nation is your very own people." And in verse 14, the Lord replies, "I will personally go with you, Moses, and I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you." And then Moses basically says, "Okay, well, come with me, God." And so what's very important with this story and why I brought it up is because I wanted to pay attention to the fact that when all these Israelites, even though that they went through all this stuff with Moses, they literally saw Moses split the waters. They literally saw Moses turn that staff into a snake. They literally saw it all. But yet, even with their own eyes seeing it, they still lost faith in it because they weren't patient enough to wait for Moses to come back down from the mountain. And Moses, I mean, that's kind of a slap in the face. You've walked through this whole life with these people, and then they don't even wait for you to come down this mountain, and you have to start from scratch. And so he asks for rest, and God gives it to him. And rest is a very interesting thing because I want to make it very clear that you don't have to be secluded in order to find rest in your own mind. You don't have to be by yourself. You can find rest in that very moment in order to calm yourself, to calm your mind, to calm your body, to calm whatever goes on in your life. I know, like for me, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to speak on, I've been trying to figure out this whole rest thing from the moment this year started because that was kind of the word I chose to focus on. And when I was sleeping, I had this dream, and it was a very, 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 very disturbing dream. And I hadn't had night terrors in a very long time. I haven't had them in a very long time, but I had one that night. And while I was sleeping, it was really creepy. And I was in this store, and this lady was like turning her head and trying to like make these things all float and stuff. And in my sleep, I called out and I said, "In the name of Jesus, you have no place here. I'm here to tell you that if you're looking for rest, you don't have to step back because God is with you in it all." I mean, I was quite literally resting in my sleep. And I still had the tools that I needed in order to defend myself on those crazy, crazy things. And it doesn't just stop there because once you wake up, you're like, oh, that dream was really creepy. Like, that was really scary. And then you start dwelling on that. But you have to take a step back and say, no, God, give me peace with this. Take this away from me. I don't want it anymore. Just take it from me. Take it all. And I don't have time to have rest. I don't. I unfortunately do not have a moment in my life where I can sit down by myself and go and pray and go and just have time with him. Unfortunately, I mean, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. The only time that I have is my drive to work and my drive back. That's my only time that I get to myself. Because as soon as I'm done with work, I go directly to school where I'm doing my studies, and then I go meet up with friends or whatever. And then afterwards, all of a sudden it's 12 o'clock at night and I'm going home and I'm barely awake because I have to drive. And in my work, I deal with a lot of things. I mean, I work in safety, so there's a lot of things that I have very many daily battles that I have to find peace with. And I was just becoming so overwhelmed by all these projects, all these tasks, all these trainings I had to give. And unfortunately, all my factors kind of go against me. I mean, I'm a girl for one. I am young for two. And so when I'm trying to enforce stuff, people don't take me seriously. That's kind of expected. I mean, I'm in a male-dominated field where people are 3 times my age. And I had to figure out how to talk, how to walk, how to make people respect me. And it just got to me every time. And when I would give things like trainings, I would have to take that 1 second and just say, Lord, give me rest. Give me rest. When I give this training, give me rest. When all these people are staring at me, waiting for that moment I mess up, give me rest. Like, if I I have to calm myself down after work. When on my drive, I usually spend time talking myself down, talking myself out through the day. And then I started finding myself talking about the things I could have said, the things I could have done, how I could have handled this situation better. And that's not healthy. That's not healthy, because then you're just taking your work with you everywhere you go. And I started doing that with everything. I had a whole bunch of projects. I had all these group projects, let me tell you, are not fun. For any of you in school, especially high school, I did a lot. But college is just another level, because we're all online. And so half of the people in your group you don't even see. So you have to find all these reasons to like go out and find them and contact them. And it was just, and there's different personalities in them. And I had to take a second and always just take a step back when I'm with those groups. I mean, these are different people. And I just had to take a step back and say, okay, like, just because this isn't the way you would do it doesn't mean it's not the way someone else would. So, like, to swallow my pride in myself, because I am 100% go all the time. And so I don't have time to listen to someone else and to listen to what they want to do, because I need this done. I need it done now, and this is the way we're going to do it. And that's how I've always been. And so when I started working in these group projects, when I started working in the workforce, that was something that I really had to work on, to just take a step back and say, okay, God, like, I'm trying here. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to understand, but I just can't. And so I would just take a step back and just ask for rest again. And it started becoming a daily thing. Instead of going home and talking to myself about all the things I could have fixed in that day, I was instead sitting down and talking to God about my day and how I could instead invoke Him into my life and how I could put Him into the things that I was doing. And I mean, working in the field is great. I love my job. And if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, oh, she's just a little girl, like she just wants special treatment, you're not listening to what I'm saying, because that's not it. Because you can find your purpose through the things that you do, and there you can find different facts from people that you would have never expected. And it took me a really long time to be patient with these people and say, okay, they're not listening to me. How can I make them understand what I'm saying? And I had to take a step back and completely revolve my job into figuring out how they would think, because that's the only way that I could get them to listen. And that was the only way that like God could direct me to do what I needed to do. I mean, if I sat there and said, hey, don't go into that like live cell, someone might look at me and be like, haha, you little girl, like you don't know what you're talking about. I already locked that out. And then I could say, okay, well, let's listen how you locked it out. As you can see from this, you missed this part. You know, things like that. And it just took me a really long time to just get over myself, to just get over it. Because there's so many things that happen all the time. And there are so many people that I encounter all the time. And it's also really hard for me to know when to stay and know when to leave from those people too. I mean, we encounter so many people all the time. And I have a lot of and I'm very blessed with a lot of friends, but sometimes those friends are not meant to be in my life for that long. And when it starts becoming a part where they are just breaking away at me and tearing me down, and I'm trying to build them up, but they're not listening to me, you have to know when to walk away from those people. And the hardest thing for me too was when it's always the ones that are with you the longest, and it's the people who you are around all the time the longest, and knowing when it's time to say enough. Enough is enough. You're just not good for me. I wish you the best, but I gotta walk away. Like, when is enough going to be enough? And when I look at that story, I mean, when Moses came down, he shattered those. Enough was enough. He shattered those. We're starting from scratch. You're not listening to me. You're not listening to God. You instead are taking everything that you could have done, and you just wrecked it. You just wrecked it. And so I really encourage you that in those moments where you're extremely just overwhelmed with things, just to take a step back and ask in that moment to find rest. So we're going to go to our second part of this. We're going to go to the second story about Martha, and that's going to be in Luke 10:38 through 41. But before we go to that, I want to take a look at 10:26, which is in the same chapter. Okay. Luke 10:26, it says, Jesus replied, what does the law of Moses say? How do you read it? The man answered, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus replied, right, Jesus told him, do this and you will live. And the man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And then he goes into the story of the Samaritan. I really liked that. It's so funny how God kind of puts the pieces together when I try to figure out what I'm going to talk about. Because I had already known I was wanting to talk about Martha, which we're going to talk about, but in the same chapter he references Moses and his commandments, and I just had gotten that this morning as well. But what I love about this commandment is to love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And that's not a half thing. You can't just half love God. Okay, I'm going to fill God in my mind for only half a second. And then when I want to do what I want to do, I'm just going to disregard that and I'm just going to do what I want to do. But in order to find rest, to truly find rest, is to fill your mind with God. That when the things that are giving you anxiety are coming at you, that instead you're taking a pause and you're focusing your mind on God. In order to focus your heart, you have to focus your mind, because your heart might want one thing, but your mind's the thing that controls your body. Your heart's the thing that pumps the blood. So those have to be in sync. If you have them on two separate pages, yes, I love God with all my heart, but man, I really, really, really just don't want to do this one thing that I know God wants to do, but so I'm just not going to do it because I'm walking the other way. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. You can push your problems to the side all you want. They will still be there the moment that you have time to stop. And that was something that I really understood this break. I'm on spring break right now for my school, and so I don't have school to focus on. So that was one burden that I didn't have to deal with today, this week. So I started thinking, in my times when I didn't have anything to do, where I didn't really know what to do with myself, I had these issues that I had pushed back that started coming up again. And that's the funny thing about the devil, because as soon as you are at your most vulnerable, he's going to be like, hey, remember that one thing you did 3 weeks ago back in or that one thing you did back 2 years ago? Remember that one thing you could have done to make yourself better? That's not how it works. So you need to understand when you're under attack. You need to figure out what works for you and how to fight back at that thing that's coming at you, right? So, and that's something that always took me such a long time, was knowing when I was in my own mind and knowing when I was in the mind of God. And knowing the difference that, okay, let's say this person's getting made fun of. Am I going to be in this place with that person and ask these people who are bullying them to stop? Or am I going to join right into the bullying because that just seems to be the easiest way? And so that's why this commandment is so important, that you literally surrounding your whole life on God. Every part of your body, every walk you walk, every step you take, it's always going to be with God. And that's hard to do, especially in this time and age. I know when I was in school, it was always so hard to try and follow what God wanted me to do, because it wasn't necessarily what society would have thought was okay. And that's really hard to go against that status quo, that when there's someone in my class that no one talks to, instead of ignoring them as well, to go talk to them as well. That was always so hard for me to swallow my pride, to say, get over yourself. These people need you. Go ahead and go out and do what God has meant for you to do. Walk your walk with Christ. And then now we're going to get into Martha. So in Luke 10, what did I say, verse 38. So Jesus is, I really love reading the Old Testament because Jesus is always constantly traveling and always constantly talking to people and touching people in some way, shape, or form. And in verse 38, he comes to Martha and Mary's house. And as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way into Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where there was a woman named Martha who welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he had taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing, and she came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here with you while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." And I really like this story, especially when it comes to like things that distract us. Because in Martha's mind, she was preparing this dinner because like she thought that when Jesus comes, she's gonna like feed him well. She's gonna treat him like a king. She's gonna do all these things. But she missed the whole point of what Mary and which found, which was spending time with him. Sometimes the best thing is just to sit down and to spend time with Jesus. And that's exactly what Mary did. And isn't it interesting that Jesus said, this one thing that you're supposed to be doing, that Mary was doing, it will not be taken away from her. So like we always have our own ideas in our life. We always have our own situations that we try to make sense of. Again, we have to realize that sometimes you just have to stop. You have to spend time with Jesus. You have to figure out what you're supposed to do. And sometimes it's not immediate either. But Mary found that, and that is why Jesus allowed her to stay with him. And I wanted to bring up, since we're talking about rest, I really like the song Rest by Carrie Job. I love that song. And I wanted to read you the first verse of it. It says, "I see it clear now. You're all around me. And every little thing, where can I go now to free your presence? There is nowhere you won't be." And I really like that verse because it really kind of gives you a visual that like no matter where you go, God is always going to be there. It's just, are you willing to look? Are you going to look? And those times when you feel like there's nothing, those times when you feel like you're just going to lose that battle, you're going into a losing battle, he is all around you. There is nowhere that he will not be. But are you going to find him? Are you going to be able to identify, okay, yes, this is Jesus, this is God, this is not. And that is something that when you spend time with God, it starts like your rest that you feel, it starts becoming your entire life. That like when you come to problems, you are stepping back and you're saying, okay, God, like take this. Okay, God, take that. Okay, God, show me how to do this. And it becomes a daily thing. And then if you're like me and you're trying to sleep and you have this whole battle happening in your sleep, God gives you the tools because you have equipped yourself and trained yourself so well in order to fight those battles, even when you're not even conscious of it. You start doing it and it becomes second nature. Every time you do what you're supposed to do, it becomes second nature. And I really just have been trying to focus on rest. I mean, we had gotten some news about one of our friends that was kind of like changed our whole lives. So when I was really like trying to stress about it and trying to like figure out what I was going to do, what my next steps are going to be, how to like help him through this problem, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I knew that the best thing for me in that moment was to just go for a walk. And I love hiking. Hiking is one of my things. Like I said, find what works for you when you are freaking out. Find what works for you. And so, and I have not gone on a hike by myself ever. And so I went to Indian Springs and I had a couple of minutes to kill before I had to go meet up with my cousin. And so I stopped at Indian Springs and I walked around and I went up to the very top of that hill. If you've ever been to Indian Springs, there's this like really big hill with like a bench, and it's really cool. And you can see like the whole park. So I hiked all the way up there, and I sat down, and I just started singing that one Fresh Wind song because I just love that song. And then I could feel the wind just picking up, and I was like, yes, like I feel you, God. Like I know you're here with me right now, and I just don't know what to do. And I found rest in that moment, that even though there's this like troubling thing that's happening to my friend and it directly will impact like me as well, I knew that even though I don't know the answer yet, it's going to come. I just have to be patient. And that's just so peaceful to know that like even when everything's just kind of shooting at you, like you can stop and say no. Like it's not my timing, it's his timing. I was listening to this girl, and she said, it's not God's rejection, it's God's redirection for you. And just like figuring out when it's time to, again, take that different walk, when it's time for you to walk away or to fling forward, or like what you're supposed to do. But you'll never understand, you'll never live a truly fulfilling life unless you completely revolve yourself around what God wants you to do. And the things that are the hardest are the ones that you just want so badly, the things that are so comfortable to you, and comfortability can be such a holdback sometimes, but it's just something that you're so used to. And maybe it's time that it's like time to go, or it's time to run towards it. But you have to, again, understand, when is it time to take a step back? When is it time to swallow your pride? When is it time to just relax for 2 seconds? Like I said, I don't have time to, but I'm trying to find a way in order to achieve that. And in order to do that, the only thing that has truly given me peace with all of the things that I'm trying to juggle right now is finding rest with God, finding those one moments when I'm setting up for a training, saying, okay, God, just let me have you. Let me have you. And let me get through this, and let me listen to what you have to say, because listening is also very hard too, especially when it comes from God, because it takes time, and time is something I don't have, but it's something that I need to be patient for. So I'm gonna wrap up with a couple of Psalms. So if you want to turn to Psalms 3, we're gonna read that one first. I always like ending with Psalms or Proverbs because they're just such a nice wrap. Okay, so let's start. So, oh Lord, I have so many enemies, so many are against me. So many are saying, God, you will never rescue him. But oh Lord, you are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. I am not afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me on every side. Arise, Lord, rescue me. My God, slap thy enemies in the face, shatter the teeth of the wicked. Victory comes to you, O Lord. May you bless your people. And then we're going to go to verse 37, 3 through 9. Psalms 37, 3 through 9. I trust in the Lord to do good. Then when you live safely in the land and prosper, take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires. Commit everything you do to the Lord, trust in him, and he will help you. He will make your innocence radiate like the dawn, and the justice of your cause will shine like a noonday sun. Be still in the presence of the Lord, and I will wait patiently for him to act. Don't worry about evil people who will prosper, or fret about their wicked schemes. Stop being angry, turn from your rage. Do not lose your temper, it only leads to harm. For the wicked will be destroyed, but those who trust in the Lord will possess the land. And if you have time, I really encourage you to read this entire Psalms, because it's a very, very, very powerful one. And what I also like about both of these is they mention safety. And since I work in safety, obviously I love that. But I guess I never really thought of God as someone who is like your safety, who is the one who will, I guess, protect you. Because through my classes, I learned that safety is the reason why you're not dead after the end of the day, right? So I really like that it mentions safety. And I also like how it says to stop being angry, to stop with your rage, that, I mean, you can get so caught up in your problems and so caught up in the people that really just grind your gears. And I'm here to tell you to just stop being angry, no matter how hard that is. Again, swallow yourself and just turn your eyes to God. Don't lose your temper. That's what they want. But if you just say, like, you know what? Okay, I'll pray for you, or I love you. It says in the Bible to love your enemies, so maybe you should start if you have not yet. But there's just so many things that, like, God can push you to do, that God can guide you to do. It's just like, when will you listen? When will you start putting your whole life around Him instead of just part of you? If there's something that's holding you back, I encourage you to figure that out and let it go. If there's something that is going to push you forward and it's maybe something that's out of your comfort zone, I encourage you to go for it. Go for it. Fulfill what you need to fulfill. Be with God in the ways that you need to be with Him, but find what works for you. For me, like I said, the only time I really get to find rest is when I'm in my car. And so in that moment, I turn on some, worship music, and I'll praise God. And, when I'm going on my hikes with my good friends, I thank God for the things that are in those woods. Or if there's one moment where it's just like super hard, or you're come to a difficult time or a conflict, I encourage you to find what works for you, to just take that second to pause and say, Lord, just give me rest for this. Lord, give me rest. Don't let me dwell on this, because, the world will come and go, but God will always be there. He will always be with us. So know what works for you. Know what you have to do or find what you have to do in order to achieve that fulfilling rest, where you can finally just be able to go to sleep and not have to think of whatever for how many hours. So that's what I will leave with you today. Again, I encourage you to read that Psalms 37 if you have not yet. It's a very, very good one. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Larry.